Hi, everyone. Let's get started. Hey, mind, if you could stop racing so I can go to sleep, that'd be great. I'm sure that you know how you feel, how this feels if you are listening to this webinar, and I know how this feels too. I got into helping people with sleep because of my own sleep struggles. So my insomnia actually started in late pregnancy, which I figured was just hormones and there was nothing I can do about it. But it didn't go away even after my son was born, even after he was sleeping through the night, really for another couple of years until I finally figured it out. And for me, that looked like I would try to go to bed early because I was so exhausted and it would take me forever to fall asleep. And then I would wake up at 3 or 4 in the morning and not be able to go back to sleep until it was 6 and my son was waking up for the day. So I was pretty exhausted and miserable. And the ironic thing is that I had become a pediatric sleep consultant. So my son didn't sleep well as an infant, and I ended up hiring a sleep consultant to help. And it made such a difference that I became a sleep consultant to help parents with their babies and kids sleep. But I wasn't sleeping. And so 2 years after my son was born, here I am. I'm still working a full-time job. I have my business as a pediatric sleep consultant. I have a young child. I'm not sleeping. I'm miserable and I feel like a fraud. So in January 2019, I finally decided to do something about it. And luckily, who I trained with for pediatric sleep also offered an adult sleep certification course. I decided to take it, even though I was very skeptical because, again, I already knew a lot about sleep. And it taught me some of the basics, looking at diet and exercise and sleep hygiene and how you think about sleep. And it actually helped. I made some changes to my schedule. I changed some of my habits and what I did when I couldn't sleep and what I was eating and when. And within a month, I was sleeping great 95% of the time. So I was stoked and I'm like, I'm going to help other people with this. This works. And then about a year later, I went through a very stressful period in my life and my sleep deteriorated again. And all the things that I learned before did not help. And so luckily, I have a background in nutrition. I have a master's in nutrition, and I've been working in the health and wellness space for a long time. And so I learned about functional lab testing, and I learned about a certification called functional diagnostic nutrition, in which I would learn about doing these functional lab tests, how to interpret them, and what to recommend. And so I dove deep into the certification and I was able to take the test for myself. And I found out that I had a few things going on in my body, which I will tell you about in this presentation, that were causing my sleep issues. And so with that certification, with that training, now I use these tests to find out what's going in my clients' bodies that are also causing sleep issues. Because there is a mental component to not sleeping and there is a physical component. And I'm going to talk about both of them today. So I do want you to know that if you aren't sleeping and you are obsessing about sleep, that this is normal. This is actually your brain obsessing about what it needs because it is trying to help you survive. So sleep is one of our basic needs, along with air, food, water, and shelter. We need sleep. And so if you aren't getting it, your brain's going to do whatever it can to help you get it, including making you think about it all the time, even though thinking about it all the time isn't actually helping you sleep. But your brain doesn't really know that. And so it's the same when you go on a diet and cut calories and you're hungry all the time and you obsess about food all the time, or when you're thirsty and all you can think about is water all the time. Like, it's because your brain needs you to eat and drink water and sleep to survive. And so it's actually trying to protect you. But we can, once we know this about our brains, we can kind of hack into it a little bit and change some of these thoughts. And so that's what you're going to learn today, is how to control your thoughts and quiet your mind. I'm also going to get into how your body contributes to your racing thoughts, and then how to get to the root of what's causing your monkey mind so that you can sleep peacefully. The Buddha says, the mind is everything. What you think, you become. And this is so true. If you've done any work in the personal development space, a lot of it is about you create your reality, and our thoughts, control how happy we are and things like that. And this is true. If you think you aren't a good sleeper, you aren't going to be. And so it's really easy to get caught in this self-talk loop that just keeps going and doesn't stop. And it starts with, I can't sleep. So if you have a bad night's sleep and you're thinking, I can't sleep, then eventually that is going to become your self-image, that I'm not a good sleeper. And then what's going to happen? You're not going to sleep well because you're telling your brain that you can't sleep. And so then you tell yourself, I can't sleep. And so you're caught in that very vicious cycle. So we want to break this cycle. Like, yes, we want to find out why you can't sleep, but we can also improve this. And really the only way to, even if you address the physical things causing insomnia, if you still are in this self-talk endless loop, then it's going to be really hard for you to get better. And what's interesting is that studies show that people who have trouble sleeping overestimate the time it takes them to fall asleep by 30 minutes and underestimates her total sleep time by 1 hour. So these are when people go into a sleep lab and they get their, they're hooked up to EKGs, and their brain waves are measured all night long. And then they are asked the next morning, how much did you sleep? How long did it take you to fall asleep? And we aren't very good judges of this. And the researchers think that this is because when we are in stage 2 sleep, which is one of the lighter stages of sleep that happens before deep sleep, it can feel like you aren't even sleeping yet. And so if someone were to wake you up in stage 2 sleep, half the time you would say, I wasn't even sleeping. I know that this is true because this has happened to me. So every once in a while, I will fall asleep before my husband and he'll nudge me and say, you're snoring. And I'm like, what are you talking about? I wasn't even sleeping yet. But obviously I was, because I was not aware that I was snoring. So I have seen this to be true. And so a lot of the times that you are lying there and you think you're awake, you might actually be in stage 1 or stage 2 sleep and kind of in and out and sleeping more than you actually think you are. Now, I know it's easy to get really anxious when we can't sleep. And I just want you to consider that sleeping and even lying in bed is actually a very comfortable, luxurious thing to do. So it's dark, it's quiet, there's nothing expected of you, you're not missing out on anything. It's supposed to be really relaxing. And when we get anxious about not sleeping, it's more worry about how we're going to function the next day, or if we're worried about our health and there's something wrong with us. And so the actual moment of not sleeping doesn't have to be stressful if we can not project what this actually means. And so here is an exercise that I suggest for you to do to kind of reverse these negative thoughts that you might have about sleep. And so for the next few days, I suggest paying attention to your thoughts, to how much you're thinking about sleep, how much you're worrying about sleep, how much you're telling yourself how tired you are, and just start noticing that, writing it down. You can carry around a journal or mark it on your phone and just make little tick marks every time you see that or you notice that coming up. And this is because awareness is the first step. Like, we need to realize how often this is happening before you can make any changes. And then Once you have become more aware, then I want you to start working on switching those negative thoughts to positive thoughts. So the negative thoughts are still going to come up. That's just normal, but we can intentionally switch to a more positive thought, or at least a neutral thought, to get out of this self-talk loop. And so that can be something like, I'm going to figure this out, or I've slept well before, I can do it again. It doesn't have to go to the extreme of, I'm going to sleep great tonight. It actually has to be believable to your brain. So, something that is more neutral or more believable is what is best to switch that to. And so then every time you notice that you're thinking, I'm worried about sleep tonight, I didn't sleep, what is wrong with me? That you start thinking, I'm going to figure this out, or I can do this. I've done it before, I can do it again. And I also want you to notice how much you're telling other people about your sleep issues. I know for me, when I wasn't sleeping, the first thing I would do in the morning is tell my husband how poorly I slept. Then I would get to work and I'd tell my coworkers and tell them about how tired I was. And I had to stop doing that because it was making my self-image be of someone who isn't sleeping. And so I want you to catch yourself when you notice talking about your sleep to other people, that you just stop. You change the subject, you talk about something else, and that just stops becoming part of the conversation. And then another thing I suggest is when you are lying in bed, either at bedtime or in the middle of the night, is coming up with a sleep mantra. So a phrase that you're going to repeat over and over until you fall asleep. I know for me, every night I get up and go to the bathroom, and then I get back in bed, and now I go right back to sleep. But I tell myself I love sleep, and it just sends this great feeling through my body of relaxation and gratitude and love. And then I go to sleep. I've had clients who I'm sleeping. So back to the idea that you might actually be in a lighter stage of sleep. And so telling yourself that you're sleeping can be really comforting as well. So you can use this if you are having, when you are falling asleep or in the middle of the night, and that can help. I want to bring up something called negativity bias. And this is part of human nature. And this is that we focus on the negative instead of the positive. So let's say you give a presentation and 10 people tell you it was great and one person has some criticism. What do we always focus on? We focus on that criticism. And psychologists call this negativity bias. And this served us well in evolutionary times because, let's say, as hunters and gatherers, we needed to remember the one poisonous plant more than we needed to remember the 20 good ones that were edible. So as long as we focused on the bad, then we were more likely to survive. But this doesn't serve us well now in many different cases, such as this. If you have a good night's sleep, then you might not appreciate it because you're still focused on all the nights you haven't slept well, or on days you feel fine. You're not celebrating that. You're not focusing on that. You're focusing on all the other days that you haven't felt fine. And so we really want to start training our brains to look for the positive, to pay attention to the positive. Because what we pay attention to is actually what manifests. So this leads me to another recommendation that I have, and that is to practice gratitude. Now, you may have heard of this and think it's wishy-washy or whatever, but studies show that gratitude has some major benefits. It lowers stress hormones. It activates dopamine, the neurotransmitter responsible for making you feel good, and it activates serotonin. It regulates negative emotions because it improves nerve response in your prefrontal cortex. And it helps with sleep, increases quality of sleep, decreases the time it takes to sleep, lengthens how long you sleep. So these are proven benefits of gratitude. And so I like something called the 5-minute journal that you see here that has prompts that you do first thing in the morning and then before you go to bed at night that only take a couple minutes. And this really helps you focus on the good things, right? On what you are grateful for, because it is impossible to feel gratitude and feel anxious at the same time. It's impossible to have a positive emotion and a negative emotion at the same time. So the more you can feel positivity, gratitude, thankfulness, things like that, then the less time you have to feel anxious and worried and tired. So I would highly suggest that. Now I want to talk about things going on in your body that can cause your mind to race. I know that it seems like a mental problem, so, same as anxiety, same as depression. These seem mental health, right? It's in our head, but there are real things going on in your body, some imbalances in your body that can cause your mind to race, that can cause anxiety, that can cause depression. So the first one is cortisol. You may know cortisol is one of our stress hormones. It's also the hormone that wakes us up in the morning and keeps us alert throughout the day. And yes, it is a part of our fight or flight response. So if you are being chased by a bear in the mountains, I like to say that because I live in Jackson Hole, Wyoming, by the mountains, then your brain is going to release cortisol, which is going to help you deal with that stressor. So it's going to increase blood sugar so that you have energy to fight or run. It's going to heighten your memory, attention, and focus so that you can think quickly in the moment. It's going to increase blood pressure, heart rate, body temperature. It decreases sensitivity to pain. So it's pretty much putting all of your body's resources into survival in the moment. But what it's also going to do is it's going to suppress the immune system. It's going to suppress the digestive system. It's going to suppress the reproductive system, because none of those are important for that moment of living, of surviving. So it takes resources away from those systems. And what's funny about our brains or our body is that it doesn't know the difference between different types of stress. So yes, if you're being chased by a bear in the mountains, you need to be able to run from or fight that bear. But we have the same stress response, even if we are overwhelmed at work and have too much to do, or you're stuck in traffic and running late and stressed about it, or you get in a fight with your partner. Like all of those scenarios, we still release those stress hormones, even though we don't need to run from or fight something. And one thing too I want to point out is that if your body isn't making enough cortisol anymore, it resorts to adrenaline instead. So adrenaline is going to cause even more of that racing mind, rapid heartbeat, things like that. So our bodies are very good at handling acute in the moment stress. We are not good at handling long-term chronic stress. And I'm going to use this chart to show you how this works. So ideally, most of the time, we want to be in homeostasis in that green box. And you can see cortisol levels on the left are what normal cortisol levels should be in homeostasis. And when a stressful event happens, you're getting chased by a bear, then your cortisol levels go up really high and you go into that yellow box. And then ideally, once the stressful event passes, then you go back down into homeostasis, back down into the green box. But let's say that you're stressed all the time. So you're constantly overworked or too busy in your life. You have things going on in your body that I'm going to talk about in a bit that are creating this constant stress. Or you're in an unhappy relationship. And so that is causing all this stress all the time. So your cortisol levels are going to be really high all the time. You're going to be in that yellow box all the time. And it actually feels really good to be in this yellow box because cortisol is a painkiller. It's anti-inflammatory. It gives you energy. It helps you focus. This is how people get addicted to stress, because they're relying on that cortisol surge to perform. So it feels really good. Now, you can have sleep issues in this yellow box because high cortisol at night is going to suppress melatonin and wake you up. But for the most part, it feels really good. This is how you may have felt in your 20s, even if you had a stressful job, but you still felt on top of the world. You have plenty of energy. You know, you were having fun. A lot of people feel best in their 20s. But what's going to happen over time is that if these stressors don't go away, your body isn't going to be able to continue making enough cortisol to deal with all that stress. And so you're going to start sliding down the other side of the bell curve toward the orange box. And this is called the compensatory phase, because your body's trying to compensate for all the stress it's under, but it can't anymore. And so cortisol levels go back down. And in this box is when we tend to have some minor complaints. We're not running to the doctor for anything. It might be things we associate with getting older, right? We're tired at times during the day. We have minor aches and pains. We aren't sleeping well. And we tend to self-medicate in this phase. So if you're tired, you have a cup of coffee. If you have aches and pains, you take an Advil. And so, yeah, it's these minor complaints, but any symptoms at all mean that you aren't totally healthy. And what I want to point out here is that the cortisol levels in the orange box and the green box are the same. So this is why when you go to your doctor and you get your cortisol levels tested and everything is normal, if you have any symptoms, it's not normal and you're in this orange box, you're in that compensatory phase. And if you don't make some changes, then you're going to keep sliding down the bell curve into the red box, the exhaustive phase, which does not look good, right? And in this phase is when you are running to the doctor and you're getting diagnosed with diseases and disorders and you're being prescribed medication. And it's going to be a lot harder and take longer at this point to get back up over the bell curve back into homeostasis. So this shows how we don't adapt well to stress over time and why we need to minimize stress from as many sources as possible to get back into homeostasis. Now, this is what cortisol dysregulation can look like on a lab test. So this is a Dutch test. It's a dried urine hormone test that I use for all of my clients. And you can see here from the black lines, those are the range limits that cortisol should be lowest first thing in the morning, and then it spikes to its highest point within 2 hours of waking up, and then it gradually goes down throughout the day. That's what the pattern should look like. Now you can see from in the red line, the patient values, that cortisol is actually highest at the waking time. And this is a urine test, so it's actually representative of the middle of the night because you're collecting the urine that has been produced first thing in the morning for this sample. So this cortisol is highest in the middle of the night when it actually should be lowest. These were actually, this is my sample the first time I took this test, and it totally explained why I was waking up at 3 and 4 and not able to fall back asleep. Now, some of the main reasons why it's high at bedtime or in the middle of the night are low blood sugar, pathogens in the gut, food sensitivities, and an unhealthy liver. So what happens is stress causes this cascade of events. So stress leads to cortisol dysregulation, which we saw on that chart, and that's going to lead to different imbalances in the body. And it's going to be different for everyone what starts breaking down first, but there tends to be hormone imbalance. It affects liver health, gut health, nutrient deficiencies, digestive issues. And then that's going to lead to insomnia and any other symptoms out there. And then eventually it's going to come to diseases and disorders. So this is how stress is really the root of it all. So now you know that high cortisol is one of the main reasons for this racing mind, especially at bedtime or in the middle of the night. Of course, this can happen during the day too if you have high cortisol at other times of the day. It can manifest as anxiety and racing mind. Now, here is another thing that can be going on in your body that can cause this. So the good bacteria in your gut are responsible for making most of your neurotransmitters. So things like GABA, serotonin, dopamine, and melatonin. In fact, there was a study that found that 90% of serotonin was made in the gut, for example. And serotonin is the happy and joyful neurotransmitter, and it helps us fall into deep, restful sleep. And so some signs of serotonin deficiency are depression, lack of enjoyment, also PMS, inner rage, paranoia, and of course, poor sleep. Now, GABA is our anti-anxiety hormone. So that's another neurotransmitter that affects sleep as well. And if you're deficient in GABA, you find it hard to turn off your mind, which is leading to racing thoughts and anxiety. So the most common GABA issues are anxiety, nervousness, and insomnia. And melatonin, I'm sure you know, is our sleepy hormone. 90% of melatonin is made in the gut. So when I see low melatonin on the hormone test, I know that there's something going on with the gut. So I use a GI map or a gastrointestinal map to find out what's going on in the gut. And this looks at 75 different things living in the gut. So this is just a couple snapshots from what it shows. But you can see on the left here, normal bacteria in this test is low for this person. And so then they don't have enough good bacteria to make all these neurotransmitters that are essential for sleep and for relaxation and for calming the mind. And then this person also has lots of opportunistic bacteria. So these are bacteria that are normal in our gut, but they can easily overgrow under the right conditions. And then they cause a lot of inflammation and they take resources away from the good bacteria. And so, yeah, this is what is called this picture here of low normal and the high opportunistic is what's called dysbiosis, or this imbalance of good to bad bacteria. Another thing this test looks for are pathogens. So this can be parasites, bacteria, yeast like Candida. So parasites can be found in contaminated food and water, even in the United States and first world countries. And Giardia is one you might have heard of. This one shows Blastocystis hominis. H. pylori is a bacteria in the stomach that actually raises the pH of the stomach to survive. So the stomach's supposed to have a pH of 2. It's supposed to be really acidic, and that's how it breaks down protein so that we can use the amino acids and nutrients in the protein foods. And it raises the pH to a 6 or a 7, so it's almost alkaline. And so this is going to affect how well you're absorbing nutrients and how well you're digesting food. Candida is a type of yeast that is normal to have in our gut, but it can easily become overgrown as well. And Candida is very toxic. It releases this chemical called acetaldehyde that circulates around and can cause a lot of mental health issues. And the reason pathogens are so important for sleep too is because these creatures are nocturnal. And so it's the middle of the night that they're eating, excreting, releasing a lot of toxins and causing a lot of inflammation. And when this is happening, then your body releases cortisol to deal with that inflammation, which is going to cause your mind to race. It's going to wake you up. So this is the number one reason why my clients are waking up at 3 and 4 in the morning and have a really hard time falling back asleep. Now, another thing I see that can cause a racing mind and other mental health issues is hormone imbalance. So we think of hormones as women's issue, but men, this applies to you too. So keep listening. And we want our hormones to be in balance with each other. So if you think of it like a symphony where all the instruments need to be playing in the same key, the same tempo, the same volume, so that it sounds really good. And if one of those gets out of balance, it ruins the balance of all the others. It makes the whole thing sound horrible. And it's the same thing with our hormones. And I want to point out that when cortisol gets dysregulated, hormones are the first thing to get out of balance when that happens. And that's because our sex hormones and cortisol are all steroid hormones. So they use the same resources. And so if your body's constantly having to make cortisol to deal with stress, it's going to not have enough resources left over to make these sex hormones. It goes back to how, when we're stressed, we don't prioritize reproduction. We don't care about carrying on our genes when we are worried about surviving in the moment. So hormone imbalance is one of the first things to go. And you don't want to guess with hormones because they need to be in that delicate balance. So if you look on the internet and say, oh, I might have low estrogen, I'm going to take some estrogen. If that isn't the problem, then you're just going to make things worse. Like say low progesterone was the problem. So you're making that imbalance even greater or magnified. And so you really want to test and not guess with hormones. So here are some of the patterns that can lead to these mental health manifestations, like low estrogen can cause depression, anxiety, mood swings, and insomnia. Low progesterone can cause anxiety, depression, feeling stressed, nervous, jittery, and insomnia. Low testosterone can cause depression, anxiety, worry, and fear. And low melatonin can cause anxiety, depression, bipolar, and insomnia. So yeah, having these hormones in balance is going to be really important to calm your mind and to feel good. So this is back to that Dutch test. So this is showing some results from some of my clients. On the left, we have a male pattern here. So we see depleted estrogen, depleted testosterone, depleted DHEA, and then cortisol is high. So this person is still in that yellow box or maybe the orange box. So cortisol hasn't become depleted yet, but so cortisol is in range, it's normal, right? But all the other hormones are very low. And so this is totally affecting this person's sleep and mental health. Now, in men, and a lot of my male clients, I actually see really high estrogen too. And so that's an imbalance that also can cause sleep issues. And I see that as an issue of liver detox because our liver is supposed to break down estrogen. So it will show up on this test as well. And then we see a female sample on the right. And this is another example of really depleted sex hormones, estrogen, testosterone, DHEA. And this is interesting because this is from someone who is 30 years old. So they're premenopausal, and yet her hormones are depleted to postmenopausal levels. And this client was on birth control, and that's why. That's what birth control does. It lowers your hormones to the extent that you can't get pregnant, but it can also then cause a lot of other symptoms that aren't good. So luckily, she was motivated to get off birth control, and we worked on getting her hormones back in balance once she saw these results. Now, another thing I'm looking for that can really contribute to a racing mind is different patterns of mineral imbalance. So this is from a hair tissue mineral analysis test that uses the hair to find your mineral status for the past 3 months. And one of the first things I'm looking at in this test is what are called the primary minerals. So if you look at the couple boxes on the left, you see it's calcium, magnesium, sodium, potassium. And ideally, all of those should be in line with each other in the white. And so you can see on the box on the very left that this is a pattern of slow oxidation. So this is when calcium, magnesium are much higher than sodium and potassium. And this is the most common pattern I see. And this can lead to symptoms like apathy, depression, fatigue, insomnia, and ruminating negative thoughts. And then something else that I commonly see is called a calcium shell. And this is when calcium is very high. And this can cause some joint and muscle pain because calcium isn't getting into the cells like it's supposed to. It's not getting to the bone and teeth, and it's being excreted into the soft tissue like the hair and the arteries, which isn't good. But calcium is also a very sharp mineral, so that's how it can cause this joint and muscle pain. It can also cause cramps, spasms, twitches, and then all the slow oxidation symptoms that I mentioned before, including those ruminating negative thoughts. So the next pattern I see is the fast oxidation. So this is the opposite of slow oxidation because calcium and magnesium are lower than sodium and potassium. And this tends to be in type A personality. So they're wired, but they're also irritable and have a racing mind, and even panic attacks can be from this pattern. Heavy metals are something else I look for. You can see in this one, we see uranium, arsenic, cadmium, lead, and aluminum. And a lot of these heavy metals tend to accumulate in the brain and the liver and can manifest as this racing mind, anxiety, things like that. And the last thing that I commonly see, especially in my female clients, is copper toxicity. And this is when copper builds up. We need copper, but it can build up and become toxic and lead to anxiety, irritability, insomnia, panic attacks, ruminating negative thoughts, OCD, racing mind, and bipolar. So getting these minerals back in balance and dealing with heavy metals or toxic metals is really important to be able to be calm and sleep well. So let's talk about a couple clients who I've worked with. First of all, there is Eve, who was waking up in the night for the past 10 years, and she's a real estate agent. And she had gotten to where she was tired, irritable, anxious, and stressed all the time. And so she hadn't been sleeping. We found out she had a parasite, H. pylori, and candida. And she also had very low cortisol. So she was heading toward that red phase, the exhaustive phase, which explained why she felt stressed all the time, even though her life wasn't stressful. Like, she knew this, that she didn't really have things to be stressed about, but she would make a big deal out of little things. And that's because she didn't have the cortisol to deal with stress anymore. She also had low estrogen and progesterone from birth control. She had that slow oxidation pattern, and she had copper and mercury toxicity. So I worked with her on helping with all of these things. And after 3 months, she was sleeping incredible. Then there's Adam, who had been waking up in the night for hours since he was 20. He was 40, so for 20 years, half his life. He was an architect, and he noticed he didn't have the energy, clarity, and creativity he needed anymore. And this made him really anxious about being able to do his job and about the future. So his test results showed he had a parasite, H. pylori. His gut definitely wasn't happy anymore. He had really high estrogen, and he had that slow oxidation pattern, and he had some food sensitivities we had to address. And he was sleeping better in 1 month. He lost 15 pounds in 2 months without even trying. And 6 months later, he wrote, "I've regained the confidence, energy, and positivity that I always remembered throughout his life." So this is what is possible. So this is how I help with the racing mind, with sleep issues, and how I use these tests. So this is for you if you have trouble falling asleep, you have trouble staying asleep, you're waking up too early, or you go nights without sleeping at all. If you've tried everything and nothing has helped, if you know that something deeper is going on, a lot of my clients will just say that, I know there's something else. I just can't figure it out. And if you're determined to figure this out. So this program is going to find everything in both your body and your mind that are keeping you awake. So some of my clients, I'm really helping with stress and the mental part. Others don't need that help as much. It just depends on you. But if you've already tried to address stress and meditate and all those things and they aren't helping, then there's something deeper going on in your body. But we have to address both of them at the same time for you to get better. This also gets to the root cause. So the symptoms are what's on the surface, and the root cause is what's underneath. And these tests are going to find out what the root cause is. What is causing your mind to race? What is causing you to not be able to sleep? It's also testing instead of guessing. So if you've tried melatonin and magnesium and CBD and the essential oils and the chili pad and all these different things, that is guessing at what might help. Whereas we can test and find out exactly what your body needs. And it's going to be a lot faster to do it that way instead of all this experimentation. I also look at optimal ranges instead of the lab reference ranges. So when you get, say, blood work done, it comes back whether everything is in range or not. And the way the labs do this is they find the average, and then 25% plus or minus on either side is what they call normal or in range. And lab reference ranges actually vary from state to state. So there's a joke, like, how do you get rid of a thyroid problem? You just get tested in a different state and it shows your thyroid's fine. But obviously, if you have thyroid symptoms, that's not really helping. So what I am looking for are much narrower ranges that are optimal, that are what people's ranges are when they are in good health and have no symptoms. So that's what we are going for. This also looks at everything at once. So I know some of you might be like, oh, I think it's hormones. Okay, I'm going to try hormones and okay, try that out for a couple months. And then, oh, that didn't work, or it helped a little, but not enough. So let's dive into gut health. I'm going to work with someone who really specializes in gut health and go down that, path for a while. And then, okay, oh, I need to dive into this next thing. So that is going to take a very long time. What I do is I'm gathering as many clues as possible at one time. So I'm skipping the months and months of trial and error, and let's find the root of it all at once. And I also help you address them all at once, because if hormones are out of balance, it's actually affecting your gut, and it's a sign that your liver isn't healthy. So if you don't help your liver, then your hormones aren't going to be in balance. And so we really also need to address everything at once to restore your health. And that's actually what this program does. It's a health restoration program so that you can improve your sleep in a few weeks or a few months and actually sleep normally, because a healthy body knows how to sleep. It sleeps well. So this is how the program works. It includes 4 different lab tests. So that Dutch hormone test that I showed you that looks at your cortisol pattern, it looks at sex hormones. It also looks at melatonin, some B vitamins, some neurotransmitters, and it looks at liver function because it shows how your hormones are being metabolized. Then I do the GI map. So that's a gut test. That is a stool test that looks at 75 things living in your gut, the good, the bad, the ugly, as I showed you. Their pathogens, good bacteria, bad bacteria. It also shows how well you're digesting food. It shows how much inflammation is in your gut. It shows how strong your immune system is in your gut. And 80% of your immune system in your body is in your gut. So it's really important. And it has a marker for liver function. Then I do a food sensitivity test. And this is one I haven't talked about much, but the reason this is important is because if you're eating foods you're sensitive to, you might not know it, but it's causing this low-grade inflammation all the time. It's causing this constant stress all the time. And so then your body's constantly releasing cortisol to deal with that inflammation. And so my goal is to remove these foods temporarily while we work on healing your gut so that you can tolerate most foods in the future. And this is a dried blood spot test. So you prick your finger and put blood on this piece of paper, and it's a really simple one to do at home. And then the last one I do is a hair tissue mineral analysis that I talked about that shows your mineral status, your balance of minerals and heavy metals and toxic metals. And all of these tests are sent to your home, and then you do them at home, you send them back to the lab, and then I get the results. So I also give you a 90-day protocol. So this is going to be looking at everything in a very holistic way. I'm going to give recommendations for diet, for exercise, for sleep, basic sleep foundation, sleep hygiene, even though that's not the only problem. We're also going to work on stress, mental, emotional stress as well, negative thoughts about sleep, sleep anxiety, and supplements. And the supplements are to get your body back in balance so that you don't have to take things forever. We'll have 6 sessions over 6 months. And so the first session, it does take about a month to get your test results. So a lot of times, we'll have a first session while we're waiting for those and get jump started on things that you can do immediately. And a lot of people start sleeping and feeling better just from making some simple changes there. Then once we get your test results, we'll have 2 sessions going over those where I'm showing you your results, I'm explaining everything, and then I'm giving you recommendations about what we're going to do about it. And then the following 3 sessions are to, have accountability, to troubleshoot supplements if necessary, to check in, and to work on the mental part and the stress piece as well. I also offer ongoing email support. So you can email me anytime during the 6 months, and I will get back to you within 24 hours. And that way you don't have to wait for our sessions to meet or to get your questions answered. I also have a private client Facebook group, and this is to create community for you guys to get to know each other since you're going through the same thing and you probably don't have anyone else in your life with sleep issues who's going through a program like this. So it's to support each other. I offer extra support in there, answer questions, I share recipes and give motivation and things like that. And the investment for that is $4,000. That includes everything listed there. So I do get a lot of the same questions, so I want to address some of these frequently asked questions. The first one is, can I use insurance? And unfortunately, these tests are not covered by insurance. So they're not diagnostic. They're not, from a doctor, although I do work under a doctor for some of these. I have had clients use their health savings account, and I've even had a client who has alternative insurance that did cover insomnia support. But your basic general insurance isn't going to cover this, just so you know. I have people ask, well, can I just do these tests on my own? Now, all the tests I do, you have to order through a practitioner. There are, at-home tests that you can order now to look at cortisol, to look at hormones, to look at gut health. So yes, you can do those, but you also have to know how to interpret them. You have to know what it means and then what you're going to do about it. Because you can take a test and say, oh, I have high cortisol, and there are supplements to lower cortisol, but you're not getting to the root of why cortisol is high. And cortisol is actually high for a reason, to deal with inflammation. And so if you just lower cortisol, then there's going to be more inflammation in your body. So it can cause more problems down the road. So we want to know why cortisol is high. So that's why it's really important to look at the big picture. Also, people ask, what changes will I have to make? And this is going to be somewhat different for everyone. Usually there are some dietary changes. Gluten and dairy are common food sensitivities that I see. And so a lot of times I will be recommending that. You might be changing some of your habits, some of what you do before bed, some of how you deal with stress, things like that. So it is a little different for everyone, but that just gives you an idea of what I might be asking. It is a health restoring program. So yes, you're really going to be focusing on health and lowering stress and inflammation. I also work with you to make these changes as easy as possible. I give you tips. I share my personal experience. I give you lots of resources. So I'm not just saying, okay, you should be gluten-free. Good luck. Figure it out. I really support you through this. And then the last question I get is, will this work? And I will tell you that this works for 95% of my clients who follow my recommendations. I've designed this program to include the tests that are going to find the majority of what contributes to sleep issues. And occasionally I will be recommending, for a few clients, I've said, okay, we do need to dive deeper into this, or your tests indicate that there might be something more serious going on. And occasionally I have to refer to a doctor, but we're still getting to the root of it. And so this works. And if you think it doesn't work for you, or it might not work for you, I want you to question why you think that you would be in the very small minority that this doesn't work. Because this has worked for people who struggled since childhood, who struggled for decades, who go nights after nights without sleeping, or just people who have a hard time falling asleep and staying asleep. It works for all of that. So I want you to know that sleep is always figureoutable. Okay, this is fixable. Even if you tried so many other things, there's something going on and we can find out what it is. So I want you to know that. I want you to have hope, and I want you to have motivation to figure this out, because I know that it sucks to not be able to sleep. It really affects your whole life, and it doesn't have to forever. So if you want to book a call with me to talk more about what's going on with your sleep and how it can help and how this program will help you, then you can book a free discovery call with me at the website below. And I will also send you this link when I send you the replay of this webinar, so you will know how to get a hold of me. All right, thanks for listening. And yeah, I will send you this so that you have it. You can refer back to it anytime. And I hope to talk to you soon.